Emily Dickinson was a well-known poet, and her poetry has been used for many, many decades in the American school districts. They're especially used in high school when you go over the different forms of poetry and the different forms of grammar and mechanics that are used. Emily Dickinson's poetry is very well known for being extremely eccentric and rebellious. She doesn't follow any rules when it comes to grammar, and if she uses any mechanics at all, it is usually not appropriate at all, and it's not used in the places that it is. And in many of her works, she doesn't use any kind of mechanics at all. In her poetry, she was known as being rebellious and eccentric, but that wasn't the only time that she was. In her life and the way that of her lifestyle was also very eccentric and allowed her to stand out amongst her family and her friends. She never left her home very often except for to go just into the privacy of her backyard and the garden. She was hardly ever caught out in public and didn't engage in conversation with a lot of different people outside of the use of letters. Emily Dickinson, something that you may not know, was that she lived her life as a lesbian. In Emily Dickinson's poetry, she has a lot of sexual and explicit works of art where there's a lot of provocative and sexual innuendos that she uses. But when she does, you very, very, very rarely find any works of art where she uses any of these sexual terms towards a he. In most of her sexual arts, and she's talking about sexual works and sexual desires, they're usually in reference to a female, and she always uses the word she in referencing her object of lust. There are rare occasions where she uses a he, but in the forms that those are used, it is usually very less sexual desires, and they're not as provocative as the ones that are referring to a female. Evelyn White, who is a critic of literary art, says that Emily Dickinson's sexual poetry is used as her form of a verbal orgasmic desire for the woman that she can't have, for the lust that she has to be within an orgasmic relationship with a female that she can't have. In many of her poetry, she talks about missing her bride and how she wishes to be in relations with her bride. She speaks about breasts and nestling up against the warmth of them and how they make mountains that look so beautiful. And she talks about loving and having a desire for a woman. Growing up, Emily Dickinson never went out on a date. She didn't participate in any kind of dinners or anything, and she was never with a man. There have been many instances of knowing that Emily Dickinson was friends with men, but they were never lovers. She had many teachers and many mentors and many people that she went and talked to on a regular basis as far as when she was growing up and still in school that she went to, but they were never in a sexual or personal relationship. George Wister, who wrote Emily Dickinson's earliest friend, speaks of all the letters and the encounters that Emily Dickinson has with Thomas Higginson. He is the one man, other than her father, who was consistent throughout her life, who she spoke to on a regular basis. He was also a poet, and he was very popular in the American society, and he was somebody that she wrote about different things of her art, and she always shared with him. And he came and met her in her home on one instance and left and talked about how he desired to be with her, and then after that she never invited him back to her home. She had no desires of any being involved with the man. When she grew up, Emily Dickinson had a very bad mother. Her mother wasn't a part of their life at all. She was always in and out of the home and didn't stay for very long when she was. She was very irresponsible when it came to taking care of her children and didn't care to be there longer than what she had to. Because of this, Emily's sister stepped up in a big way and took care of Emily. And during all of this, their father was very distant from the girls and didn't spend a lot of time taking care of them other than financially and just supporting them with a home and food. But as far as being a companion and being a friend and being there to support them emotionally, he was not there for them. So because of this and the relationship that Emily had with her sister, she began to see men as authority figures that did not show love, that did not have compassion, that did not show any kind of emotional support at all, and seeing women as the ones that you went to for love and when you had a problem. Men were the dominant ones, and there weren't anybody that you could go and have a real, true relationship with. When Emily grew older, she also had a brother who wasn't ever home. He was many years older than her, but he married a woman named Susan, and they lived right next to Emily in a house. Susan was the only person that it ever speaks of Emily spending actual one-on-one time with. She would leave her house and go to Susan and speak with her about the different works of poetry that she had come and talk about the different the different works of art that she had gotten and would take it to her and always ask her opinion. Susan's opinion was very important to Emily. Depending on the opinion that Susan gave Emily with her poetry, she would either choose to publish it or she would just put it away in a drawer and never touch it, and it would just sit there. And there have been many works of art, works of poetry, estimating up to almost 250 pieces of poetry that were found upon Emily's death that were, when Susan read them, these were unpublished arts. She had said that she had brought them to her, and Susan had told her that she didn't like them, and then she realized how important her opinion was to Emily and realized why they had never been published. In many of her works of art, Emily compares Susan to Shakespeare's Cleopatra. She speaks of how beautiful she is. And in Emily Dickinson's Smoking Poems, they speak on how Emily describes Susan as a handsome woman and how she dreams of being with her and becoming with her and being involved with her. In use of her sexual relationships and desires that she used inside of her poetry as if she was involved, it showed her desire of wanting to be with Susan, but because she was her sister-in-law, she was not able to obtain such a relationship. Emily Dickinson definitely earned her place in American schools and in literature. She is definitely somebody for all of her eccentric and grammatical, mechanical errors that she used in poetry that actually made her poetry great and is what made Emily Dickinson so known for what she is. But though her poems are so public and are something that anybody can get at any time on any computer, in any library, in any book talking about Emily Dickinson, her life was not something that was so public. She kept it a secret. It was something that she would have been embarrassed about in her type of society. It would have embarrassed her father, who was so important in the American society and well known among all the rich and famous people. And she didn't want it to discredit her art while she was alive. All of her poetry that she submitted, she didn't want people to not get it and not read it and not criticize it unbiasedly if they knew that she was a lesbian. She never had any sorts of relations with other men. And though she wasn't ever in any kind of relationship openly, she was open in her poetry about her sexual desires, but never did so out in the open with her personal self. Thank you.